had 3 pregnancies and I almost died giving birth to every single one of them. As hard as it is to share this story, it is Black Maternal Health Week, and I think it's important that we continue to raise awareness and share our stories in order to help the next Black mom. Welcome back to another Chats with Shansay. This episode is a little bit of a hard one. However, I think it's a very important one. Black maternal health is something that has affected me personally with each and every single labor and delivery that I've had. I've had 3 deliveries, and with every single one of those deliveries, I almost died giving birth to my kids. I think by now we all know the facts. Black women in the United States experience extremely higher rates and higher chances of dying during labor and delivery than every other race. There are a lot of reasons of why Black women face such a fate. I believe one of the reasons that we are in this predicament is because that we are not listened to. This is hard. Oof, God, this is so hard. With my firstborn, I gave birth at 41 weeks. My labor was induced. Originally, I did not want to get induced just because I didn't feel like it was the right route for me. However, because he was not coming out, my doctor said we can only keep him in until 41 weeks. So that's the only options we had. When we got to the hospital, they started me off with Pitocin, and immediately, the pain was absolutely unbearable. I was not planning on getting an epidural originally, but because the pain was so awful when I got Pitocin, I decided I wanted to get an epidural. They administered the first epidural. The epidural didn't work. The first epidural, immediately my back felt very painful. It felt wrong. Something about the way they were giving me the epidural didn't feel right, but either way, I got the epidural, and of course, it did not work. I didn't feel numb. I was able to move my body. It did not work. The doctor said they couldn't give me another one immediately, so they left, and I continued to labor through the first maybe 20 hours without any other medicine. They upped my dosage. They gave me more Pitocin in order to, move the labor along. Because they were giving me the epidural, even though I was moving around and it didn't work, I still could not get up and labor on my feet because I had my mom there and my husband. Those are the 2 people I had to advocate for me. And my mom, we're African, we're from Congo. My mom specifically said, if you get up and start moving around, it's going to help your labor move along quicker. However, they wouldn't let me get up even though the epidural did not work, just because they did administer the epidural. Through the first 20 hours of my labor, the doctor had come back about 2 times and told me that we should now just consider a C-section. I personally did not want a C-section. The doctor said because the epidural did not work, they would have to try different methods of a C-section, and I might have to be put under since I'm not taking well to the epidural. In which I replied, okay, let's try another epidural, because if the options of a C-section is the only one I have left, I want to be awake while I am, delivering my baby via C-section. I got the second epidural maybe 24 hours after. The second epidural also did not work. At this point, I am thinking it's something wrong with me, or maybe it's an epidural. Either way, the epidural did not work, and they came back about 5 hours later, gave me the third epidural. The third epidural also did not work. During these last maybe 30 hours, I was in labor for about 3 days. At this point, they're not letting me eat at all. I haven't had anything to eat during my labor and delivery because the doctor was saying, the way your labor is going, you're most likely going to end up having a C-section. We're not giving you any food. At this point, I remember asking for water. They weren't really giving me any liquids. They let me chew ice once or twice. My husband was asking them to give me something to eat because I'm starving, I'm in pain. At this point, I'm just laying down and I absolutely have no energy to do anything. Either way, when I would ask for any of these things, they would not give me anything. About the 3rd day of us being in labor, I finally got some traction. I think they probably administered a lot more Pitocin during this process to speed on the labor. I finally got some traction. I was stuck at 8 centimeters dilated for a very long time. I eventually got to maybe 9 centimeters dilated, but I still was not. The baby's head was down, but again, I'm still in labor. At this point, the doctor on call mentioned that they are just gonna prep me for a C-section. They just can't keep me there in labor any longer. We had a switch of shift, and a Senegalese doctor, a black doctor, had finally come on shift. And I remember at this point she spoke French. My mom speaks French. My mom asked her if my mom can try using some oils to help me like with the labor, and if my mom can help me maybe stand up. Like basically my mom was just trying anything at this point so that I don't end up in a C-section when the epidural did not work. When the doctor allowed my mom to help me, this is when the labor started moving along. I was finally in labor. I was about to push. It was time for me to push, but I had absolutely no energy since I haven't eaten in almost 3 days. My mom asked the doctor if I could have even water or something to eat. The doctor brought me some juice, and I think it was like broth for me. After that, I had a little bit more energy. I was able to push the baby, pushed for about 30 minutes. After pushing my son, this is where things kind of took a turn. I think I pushed my baby, and then they took him. I held him for a little bit. They took him. My doctor had stepped out or was helping the baby, I think. My doctor had stepped out. There were other doctors around. And it's not just the black doctor that was helping us. There were a couple other people, physicians around. This is when I started hemorrhaging. And I'm hemorrhaging pretty badly. The doctors, I'm not really hearing much. Everybody's kind of screaming to my husband to help the baby. And then I remember them just bringing my husband next to me and telling my husband to keep me up and keep my eyes open so that I can stay awake while they try to wake me up and give me meds to get me out of danger. And as they're doing that, I'm losing a lot of blood. And I think I looked down and just saw buckets of blood. And I was like, oh no. I look in the corner and my mom is praying in the corner. The doctors are doing everything they can to, keep me alive. My husband is next to me, right besides me, kind of keeping me awake. And I really honestly, the rest of it is a little blurry. I don't quite remember. But when I finally come back to, one of the doctors or a nurse, I can't remember, it was a white gentleman that was in the room with us, looked at me and said, "Whew, we almost lost you there for a second." Like super casually, kind of like haha kiki about it. And that was my first experience giving birth to my son. Labor and delivery for my identical twins. And just to preface this by saying there's a whole lot more that went down in the labor and delivery room with my son. There was so much happening. There were so much requests that we were asking that were not given to us. We requested some food. We requested us to be in a different room. We requested so many things. And honestly, every single request was just denied or not even bothered to be listened to. Giving birth to my identical twins. My identical twins were born at 32 weeks. They were high risk, so we've always been going to a high risk doctor. The day of the birth, I literally was on my way to the doctor like I usually am. We found out they were in a danger zone and we were rushed to the hospital for an emergency C-section. Now, as you can remember, I don't take very well to anesthesia. The epidural does not work for me. However, with the emergency C-section, it was the same process. They had to apply anesthesia in order for me to deliver the twins. I remember telling them specifically what happened with my other delivery, where I was given 3 epidurals. I think my husband actually told them, epidural does not work for her. They gave her 3 epidurals and none of them took. And the doctors there, or the anesthesia specialists there, they were just like, oh no, it's probably how it was given, or like it wasn't given properly. Like, she'll be fine, she'll be fine. They did not let my husband come with them while they were giving me the epidural. So it was just me and them in the room. And I remember them giving me the anesthesia and they were like, are you numb? And I was like, kind of. And he was like, okay. And I think they gave me more med and they were like, can you feel this? I said, no, I was pretty numb at the very beginning of the C-section. During the C-section, I remember I'm having twins. They got my first daughter out. I got Afia, I held Afia. They took her, the NICU team took her. And then when it was time to get Atara, while they were in the middle of cutting or, getting Atara out of my stomach, I started to feel, at first I felt people's hands in my stomach. And I was like, I think I can feel your hands in my stomach. And no one kind of heard me. And then my husband was like, I think the meds are wearing off. And then it was like a rush of air. And I could just like imagine an open wound and you just feel a rush of air just like on the open wound. But this time it's obviously my stomach and my dang intestines are just out. And my husband literally screamed at the lady like, hey, she needs more medicine, she can feel it. And at that point, obviously the pain was too much and I kind of just passed out. And you know, at this point, my husband is still there. He's advocating for me. And I came back to after my daughter Tara was born. I did not quite wake up until a couple hours later after I was in like post-op. I think it was 7 hours later when I finally came back to and I was able to go to the NICU and see my daughters. This is my second birth and delivery. My third delivery, it was with my son. This is my most recent delivery about 2 years ago. We had, I really wanted a Vback, and a Vback is really just a vaginal birth after a C-section. I really did not want to go through a C-section again. I did not want to get induced. I wanted to have a natural birth. And since my twins were not a C-section because of my body, it was simply because of the twin-to-twin transfusion, I was a good candidate for a Vback. So I found a doctor that I could trust to help me have a Vback, which we did. Her name was Jessa Jackson. I fought very hard to have a Black doctor during this process because I did not want to have anyone who would advocate for me. Throughout this pregnancy, I definitely fought hard to have a doula. My husband and I were in tune with my birth story, my birth plan. We knew what we wanted. I knew that my husband would advocate for me, so I felt a lot safer in this situation than I did the other two. And we moved on with the process of my labor and delivery. When it came time to give birth to my last baby, I went into labor like without even knowing, and it was a very natural labor. This was my first time actually going into labor by myself, not being induced or not being rushed off to an emergency C-section. So I went into labor at home. I got to the hospital and she was like, "Yay, you're 5 centimeters dilated. So like, here's a room." They immediately put me into a room because I was in labor. And I got my room. My doctor was amazing. Everything felt right. And then they said that my blood pressure was rising, so they had to give me magnesium. If they give you magnesium, it makes you very weak, so they don't often let you walk around. So this was about like 6 centimeters dilated. They were like, "Your blood pressure is too high." They gave me magnesium, so I couldn't walk around in labor anymore, even though like I had the strength to, but there's a possibility you could fall down while you're on magnesium. When I got kind of stationary, I noticed that my labor kind of staggered. I wasn't moving anymore. My labor wasn't moving as quickly anymore. So I asked the nurse if I could get up and labor on my knees, my hands and knees, not even walk. I just wanted to labor on my hands and knees for a while. And this particular nurse said, "No, we can't let you do that because you're on magnesium and I can't sit here and help you do it." And my husband said, "You don't have to sit here and help her do it. I'm here, I will help her do it." So my husband helped me get on my hands and knees and walk around a little bit in labor. And we noticed my labor was moving a lot quicker. Everything was moving quicker. But before I got on my hands and knees, the nurse has come in and checked me, and I was about 6 centimeters dilated. And she said the baby's head was like kind of still high. I wasn't crowning yet. I would say this was about maybe like an hour earlier. She checked me about an hour ago. About an hour later, I've now been laboring on my hands and knees for a good maybe 40 minutes, and I felt a shift. This is not my first baby. This is my third baby, my third pregnancy. So when you're crowning, when you feel like they tell you if you feel like you're about to poop, that means it's time to push, right? So I was like, "Babe, the contractions have now gotten very, very bad, like super painful." I was telling my husband, I was like, "Babe, I feel like I have to poop." And he was like, "Okay, let's tell the nurse." So my husband calls the nurse, and my husband's like, "Hey, like she says she wants to poop. She feels like she's about ready to push." The nurse literally came and said, No, I just checked her like an hour ago. She was at 6 centimeters dilated. It doesn't happen that fast. She's fine." And at first, my husband was like, "Okay, all right, we're gonna like, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm doing too much. Maybe she's right." So she left, and then 2 seconds after she left, I looked at my husband, and that pain and that contraction was so hard. I was like, "Nah, this feels like this baby is coming." So I told my husband, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. This feels like it's coming." So my husband calls a nurse back, this white nurse, and he is like, "Yeah, hey, like I think she's ready to push. Like she's really feeling it." Once again, the nurse is like, No. I just checked her. She's fine." And my husband was like, "I don't care. Go get our damn doctor," right? At this point, my husband like had to literally almost raise his voice and tell this nurse, I don't care, go get the doctor. So she finally kind of like snaps out of it and listens and goes to get the doctor. My son was early. He was 36 weeks early, right? He's not quite preemie, but he's right there, right about 37 weeks, but he's still a premature baby. I have been on magnesium, and if there's one thing you need to know about magnesium is that it makes that baby very tired, and it makes it so that it's a little bit hard for them to breathe when they first come out, and he's also 36 weeks at this point. So it was very important that there is a NICU team there the minute that he's born in case he needs help breathing. Our daughter finally gets there. She looks at me, she looks under, checks me, and goes, close your legs, do not push. The baby's head is right there. She's like, we cannot let you push until the NICU team is here because somebody needs to be here to take care of the baby. At this point, obviously, I'm panicking because I'm like, if you've ever been in labor, that urge to push is not something you can hold. It's not something you can control. Like, you gotta push, you gotta push. So I am holding it, I'm trying to hold my legs, and then I just can't. It's no longer safe for me to hold my legs together. So I have to push, the doctor gets it together. I literally had one big push and he was born. And like the doctor predicted, like we both knew, he needed the NICU team there. The baby comes, the baby is with us, and just like the doctor thought, he was not breathing. He was not breathing on his own. As I'm pushing the baby, the NICU team is rushing to us and got there just in time to give him a CPAP and help him breathe. At this point, I am having a literal panic attack. Like, I am hyperventilating. They have to give me meds to calm me down because I felt the moment when I was like, oh my God, I might lose my baby because this nurse did not listen to me. Every time I tell this story, I have to like calm myself and take myself out of those moments because there's no reason why I should have to deal with any of this because I'm a Black woman giving birth in America. But we live in the world that is and not in the world that should be. So this is my story. This is my birth story. And it's not one that I share often, that I like sharing because of how traumatic the experience was. But I also think it's important to share these stories and to give other Black moms the knowledge, the gift and the power of knowledge. It is so important that as Black women going into labor and delivery, that we have a few things in hand. If you're a Black mom that's going to deliver a baby that is looking to have kids in the future, you need to, one, have a very strong team to advocate for you. Whether that is your husband, your cousin, your mother, someone who loves you fiercely and will stand beside you and advocate for you, even when the doctors say no. They have to know your medical history. They have to know your labor and delivery list and wishes. They have to know you so they know exactly what you would do in that situation. It is so imperative that we go into labor and delivery armed with those people to support us. If you can afford a doula, even better. Absolutely have a doula next to you to advocate for you because a doula is not part of the hospital team. They're part of your team. They're there to advocate for you, and they also have the medical knowledge that your family members may not have. So if you can afford a doula, have a doula with you. If you're a Black mom and you have the opportunity to have a Black doctor, yeah, do it. It is worth having a doctor that looks like you because no matter what they tell you, having someone that looks like you in this position, they know us. They know what we have to deal with and they will look out for you. This should not be what we deal with, but it is exactly how it is. If you're going into labor and delivery anytime soon and you're a Black mom, please, 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 I beg you, do your research. There are so many Black women out there who this is their stories. There are so many Black women out there who can't even say that they made it out alive. There are so many people who lost a wife, who lost a daughter, who lost a mom. And it is so imperative that we continue to share our stories and to advocate for Black women. I am so thankful that I'm still here. I'm thankful that my family still gets to have me. I'm thankful that my babies are all here and safe because my story could have ended very differently had my husband not been there to advocate for me, had my mom not been there to advocate for me. The last day of Black Maternal Health Week, If you can't tell, this wasn't really an easy video for me to film. I didn't want to do it. This is why I'm doing it very last minute. But I do hope that my story helps arm someone that's going to deliver with information. I hope that by this time my daughters are ready to give birth and deliver, they don't have to share stories like this. I hope that they live in a better world. So I'm gonna advocate for them to get a better world by the time that they're ready, if they choose to have kids, that they get to have kids in a better setting, in a safer setting, and in a safer country. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know today's episode was a little down, a little sad, but it was an important one for me to post, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. We have new videos every Wednesdays, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Chats with Shansay.